Hey guys, what's going on? It's Eli, back with another review video. Brad Bird made a big name of himself in the realm of animation, having been involved and bringing us some great pieces of animation. In the early 1990s, he did, say, The Simpsons, Family Dog, but he would then find his way into big-time animation business on the big screen with The Iron Giant. Then he would find himself being a part of the Pixar family officially, and he would bring to us, in 2004, The Incredibles, and he would once again direct another Pixar film, which being Ratatouille, and sometime later, he would then find himself in the realm of live action, having direct the fourth installment of the Mission Impossible film series, which being Ghost Protocol. And yeah, this was a great start for Brad Bird in the realm of live action. What he brought to Ghost Protocol, and if you want to see my review of that, yeah, it was amazing. Brad Bird, who had gone from animation and then stepped his way into the director's chair of live action, it was great, yeah. And fast forward a couple of years later, Brad would find himself in the director's chair once again for another live-action film straight from Disney. And this was pretty exciting at the time, that we were going to get another Disney live-action film based off of something from the Disney parks. We had seen, most notably, live-action Disney films based off of attractions at the Disney parks from, Mission Space, Country Bears, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Haunted Mansion, the list goes on. But for the first time ever, we were to get a Disney live-action film that would be based off of an entire land at a Disney park, and specifically in the Magic Kingdom. One of the lands that would become a movie of its own. But, yeah, not exactly what people were expecting. Even Brad admitting that, yeah, a lot of people thought that the movie itself would take place entirely in that land, but not exactly, no. So yes, that's right, guys. I am finally reviewing. Not to mention, this film is celebrating its anniversary. Yes, from 2015, Tomorrowland. Yes, Tomorrowland. Yeah, because, a little bit of a long pause I did. But anyway, so Tomorrowland, that was directed by Brad Bird, like I said. As I recall, and I remember especially, because me and my parents, we were looking forward to this, and seeing Brad Bird direct something live action, and because he had already directed one of the Mission Impossible films, and to do something like this, it was very exciting. I seem to recall that, yeah, because some hype around this movie, and, well, when the film itself came out, again, not what people exactly suspected, and like I said, and as I said, Brad admitting and knowing that, yeah, a lot of people expected that Tomorrowland would take place entirely in Tomorrowland, but it was more of a road trip movie and such, and, there was more in this movie than just Tomorrowland itself, and, the movie taking place in 2015, and, not a lot of Tomorrowland, but yet, at the same time, with where the storyline goes, I mean, it should be understandable, right? But, for me, because, I remember when this was coming out, I remember seeing the trailers. Again, my parents and I, we were looking forward to seeing this, and we did see this in theaters. We even got, as I recall, our movie theaters, they did hand these out. Those pins, that are in the movie, and that's the main center of the poster, the title of the film, yeah. we got each of our own, and I just, recall that my parents and we really enjoyed this movie with what Tomorrowland had to offer, with its storyline, great cast of talents, and really cool just what this movie brought. And when we see Tomorrowland itself, and this being inspired by what Walt Disney himself had envisioned for the future, and I'd say, Tomorrowland being Walt-centric, wouldn't you say so? I mean, hey, another Disney movie that did the same kind of thing in animation, which of course being Meet the Robinsons. So, Meet the Robinsons and this kind of doing the same thing, pretty much, yeah. With Walt's imagination and with his vision of the future, yeah. And of course, hence, with Walt having created one of the lands of Disneyland and the Magic Kingdom at Disney World, Tomorrowland. Yeah, promise of things to come, as they said during the old days of Disney on television. Yeah, Walt Disney's Disneyland, and then when it would then be called the wonderful world of Disney, and so on. Yeah. But anyway, so. And looking back on Tomorrowland as of now, having done a rewatch of this, yeah, I think that still, while it's not the best and not exactly what people expected, it's not to say, at least in my opinion, that it's bad. It's quite good and entertaining. And it's not Brad Bird's fault or anybody else that was involved in this movie. They tried, okay? And again, what I said, Brad admitting that what people expected was kind of the opposite. Yeah. And geez, because as I sometimes point out, yeah, on Rotten Tomatoes, a 49% score, like, come on, is it that bad? Now, if it were, say, down to 30 or 20, then yeah, I would definitely have something to say, extremely. Because I will defend Tomorrowland, okay? Because, like I said, I enjoyed it, my parents enjoyed it, and I'm sure there are some of you who are watching my review right now, you too had enjoyed Tomorrowland as well. And feel free to share by all means, of course. Yeah. Just, overall, Tomorrowland, it is what it is, sadly, and an underrated, pretty good, awesome Disney live-action film where, yeah, instead of being based and focused on, an attraction, being based off of an entire land, so, yeah. Okay, so, with the first things I've had to say about Tomorrowland now out of the way, now, as always, for me, read the description / the story. Whenever Casey Newton touches a lapel pen, if I said that right, with the letter T on it, she finds herself transported to Tomorrowland, a city filled with huge robots and sleek buildings. The gifted young woman recruits the help of scientist Frank Walker, a previous visitor to Tomorrowland, who years ago made a startling discovery about the future. Together, the two, but there's another one that's alongside with them that, brings them together. But until I get to her, the two adventurers travel to the metropolis to uncover its mysterious secrets. Okay, so now with reading the description / the story now out of the way, let us now dive in / break down the film itself. Yep. Well, already, because we get like a narration start where, yeah, we see one of our main characters, Frank Walker, being played by the good old talented George Clooney. Yeah, so telling us a story of how this all began and where Frank is now, and we can hear Casey's voice in the background. And basically, we start where Frank, when he was a little kid, well, he attended the 1964 New York World's Fair. Yeah, this was really cool. And I remember my mom just in awe, because when, just geeking out over the World's Fair and hearing There's a Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow playing, and with Rex Allen's singing voice. Yeah, the recreation of the 1964 World's Fair and a bit of Disney that we see at the World's Fair in this film was really cool. So, young Frank Walker, being played by young Thomas Robinson, attends to this invention contest where he has built a jetpack, a rocket jetpack, and he presents it to Nix, being played by another great talent in this film, House himself, Hugh Laurie. Yes. And I also know him as the voice of Dr. Cockroach, PhD. Yep. And he's done a lot more great stuff than that, but, you know, and also House. That's a biggie for him, but still, you know. Nix, he is impressed with this at first, up to when, yeah, Frank establishes that it's not been properly working, like, it's not functioning correctly as expected, and Nix then quickly loses interest. However, Nix's assistant, and I don't know, wouldn't you think, like, probably he would technically be the adoptive daughter of Nix? I don't know. The movie doesn't really establish it, but I'm just saying. Athena. Athena being played by Rafi Cassidy. Yes. And, yeah, Rafi Cassidy, if I could just say, yeah, she was great in this. A great start where, yeah, with how old she was at the time of Tomorrowland, and, yeah, just... she was really good. That's all I'm saying. Just she was really great in this, and with what Athena's like, and what Athena would prominently do later on in this movie. But Athena, taking a liking to Frank, and even with what he's invented, but yeah, Nix, he's heard enough and such. But there is a moment where Athena secretly interacts with Frank and gives him an orange pin with the letter T that's blue to take it and to use it and to follow her and Nix, but not be seen. Just, yeah, keep a good distance from them, but yeah, just still follow them. So that's what he does. And, well, we see that they all go on It's a Small World. Yeah, that was really cool. I think it's obvious that, right? Yeah, because obviously the shots of It's a Small World, clearly it was filmed at Disneyland. But, you know, just overall, it's amazing, the recreation of the 1964 World's Fair. Even seeing a few costumed characters, the Disney characters roaming around the World's Fair. Like, most prominently, we see the White Rabbit. Now, the White Rabbit, that's an original costume of the White Rabbit at the Disney parks. I do wonder, because maybe they probably pulled that from the archives or something. You would think, right? In good condition, and maybe that's what they did. So, yeah, anyways. But I just, you know, thought I'd mention that because it's just so cool, you know? I mean, it's like, you know, take, for example, Saving Mr. Banks. When, you know, towards the end of Saving Mr. Banks, everybody's at the Chinese theater, and at the premiere of Mary Poppins, we see some of the Disney characters there at the Chinese theater, and seeing from Mickey and Goofy, they're supposed to be original costumes. Yeah, that's really cool. But anyways, as well as the penguins. Yeah, the penguins being there too. So that is an example, okay? So, yeah. Anyways, so Frank sneaking on a boat, he went through the line. Actually, one of the cast members at It's a Small World was a quick cameo by the movie's composer, Michael Giacchino. Yeah, and a frequent collaborator with Brad Bird, composing and writing music and such for any of the movies that Brad Bird has directed. But anyways, so, yeah, and by the way, because while we're on that subject, because, you know, you guys obviously know about this. Because apparently, even on IMDb, Felix, a.k.a. PewDiePie, I had to, he's apparently credited, like, as PewDiePie. What is up with that? That's been a total mystery. Even I've tried to look into it at times, but nothing. But if you know, leave a comment. Anyways, alright, so... again, I'm sure maybe you guys are aware of this, but as I was saying, moving on, yeah, because Frank getting on a boat, and by wearing the pin, at a certain point in It's a Small World, the Eiffel Tower, yeah, the Eiffel Tower, the light of the Eiffel Tower indicates the pin, and it sends Frank in the boat he's in down underground, and he would find himself, slowly but surely, making his way to where he's obviously going to go, and we know, of course, which that being Tomorrowland. Yep, transportation, and yeah, he would then find himself in Tomorrowland. Yep, that's right. And, yeah, and seeing, seeing Athena and Nyx, like, they're on this, flying car, Athena waving to him, and he's, been still trying to catch up to them, and when he's still having some struggle with his rocket jetpack, although one robot, steps in and fixes up his rocket jetpack, and eventually, and when he almost fell to his death, he whipped on his rocket jetpack, and it worked. And, yeah, Athena and Nyx, they see this, but, yeah, Nyx, he still is not amused. Then Athena shows and takes Frank on a journey in Tomorrowland, what the future is like and what's going to happen from there on. So that's the story of Frank and when he was a boy and when he discovered Athena, Tomorrowland, all of this. Yeah, and because of the rocket jetpack he invented. And by the way, because there was a moment earlier where Frank, because Nyx turned Frank down, this was a callback for him on how his dad felt about this, where Frank's dad, being played by Chris Buer, if I even said that right, was saying to his son that it was a waste of time, but, oh, if only Frank's dad would have lived to see what would happen next, and for his boy, yeah. Anyways, so once Frank's story is done when he was a kid, then the attention turns to Casey, where, yeah, Casey, her introduction is, yeah, she breaks into the NASA launch base and attempts and succeeds on shutting down the machines that's going to tear down that base, because her father, whom works at NASA, he's an engineer, she doesn't want her dad to lose her job, which is understandable because he's a freaking engineer at NASA. And here's another thing. Is there nothing else he can do in NASA as an engineer? Is he just assigned to that? That's kind of baffling, and why? I don't know, but let's not make a big deal about it. And of course, have to acknowledge as also that, yeah, Casey Newton, being played by the lovely, talented Britt Robertson. Yep. This was one of my early introductions to Britt Robertson. It was between this and that show that she was on, The Dome. I think, yeah, I got that right. And if you know what I'm talking about, yeah. And she would go on to do some other pretty good films, like, that one film that she's in, based off of a true story. I'll put that name in a text, like, right here, because I just can't forget to mention it, because, yeah, it looks, it is pretty interesting, and whom she portrays in that film. Yeah. Anyways, so, and, well, what happens is, and because she succeeded on shutting down the machines that were going to tear down the NASA launch base, well, the next day, her father, which being Eddie Newton, being played by, yeah, Tim McGraw. Yeah, I've seen him before, and he's a good actor. He got a call about the situation, and, yeah, basically some new machinery, cranes from Orlando, yeah, they're going to be arriving and taking care of this. And, well, Casey, yeah, because so much for what she attempted to do the other day, but she's not going to give up. And even mentioning to her dad about the tale of two wolves, and overall, just, yeah, never give up on hope and such, that whole thing. And she's not going to give up on hope. So her attempt to do this again that evening, well, yeah, by using a helicopter drone, I guess you could say, to, tamper with the security cameras. But the police are there to, capture Cassie from what she's doing and such. And yeah, that's what happens. She gets caught and she gets taken to jail, but yeah, her daddy got her out of jail. And when she collects her stuff, well, there's one thing that was in her belongings, and that being this orange pen. Yep. And she doesn't know where this pen came from, and it's not hers. And when she picks up the pen, everything changes around her. She sees a crop field and sees a futuristic city, and just, yeah, she's a bit freaked out at first, and she looks at the pen some more, touches it, and just, yeah, no longer in the jail building, but just, yeah. And by the way, because the jail desk jockey, being played by the great talented voice actor Gary Chalk. Yeah, and he's done some on-screen acting, but I think we would most prominently know him for his voice acting. Like, for a lot of you guys, including me, he being one of the, top voice actors to voice Optimus Prime. But he's done more than that. I also remember him being the voices of Harry the Wolf and Bugaboo from the Two Scary Godmother specials. If you know, you know. And he even did the voice of, if anybody remembers this, Cavitus. One of the main bad guys of 3, 2, 1 Penguins. And if you know about that, you know. Good on you. Yeah, and I also recall he had an appearance in Stephen King's It, from the 90s. But yeah, just to name a few stuff that Gary's done. And if you know Gary, of course, such a great talent. So yeah, so he's the jail desk jockey. Also, a jail punk who is having creepy interactions with Cassie. And, even like he was about to pick up the pen, but she told him not to. And yeah, when her daddy shows up, Eddie, him scolding her with what all has happened and just, yeah. And she convinces her dad to pull over the car and touch the pen, but it has no effect on him. He can't see what she's seeing. Only she can. And even he takes the pen from her because of her madness, being a little loony. Well, not really, but, And later that evening, she sneaks in and takes it. And yeah, the more experience she has seen this different world, but even when she tumbles down the stairs, and and to properly experience this more, she gets out of the house on her bike, and yeah, then when touching it, and actually there's a time limit with how long she can experience this in completely different world. And because of that, her experience seeing the people in the future, and it's really cool with what we see in Tomorrowland, like the way that people swim in pools and transportation, these group of teenagers that are going to be going into space, and yeah. And when the time is running out on the pen, well, that's when up to Cassie's legs, water and such. And when the time runs out, she finds herself in a lake, and yeah, so at least she got a full taste of what this different world is like, which of course being Tomorrowland. Okay, so then, Cassie then wakes up her brother Nate, which being played by young Pierce Gagnon, yeah, basically to fire up their dad's computer and with the password, and looking up on eBay on those pens, and that there is a store that is, wanting to have those pens and sell them. And thus, she gets the address and takes a trip down to this store, and she tells her little brother to inform their dad that, with her being gone, she went camping with some friends. So, she then makes her way to this store, which being called Blast from the Past, and it's a comic book and memorabilia store. Yeah, man, a lot of nerdy stuff, science fiction stuff, like there's some of Forbidden Planet, Planet of the Apes, Star Wars, The Iron Giant. There's a little bit of Iron Giant merchandise there. I did see a couple of Toy Story, like Buzz and Zurg, and a little bit of, I think I did see a little bit of Marvin the Martian in there, but yeah. And the store, being run by these two clerks, who are actually a married couple. Ursula being played by Catherine Hahn, and Hugo being played by Keegan-Michael Kay. Yeah, two great talents, and, even when Hugo tries to make an entrance with futuristic doors opening, the Star Wars music plays, but yeah. And, Casey showing the pen that she has, and they are aware of this pen, and confirming to Casey that what she saw by touching that pen is real. And when telling her with some detail about Tomorrowland and such, and because on account of the pen. However, things start to get a bit intense when they start to ask her who gave her the pen, but she doesn't know, and she's telling them that it just came to her. She has no idea where the pen came from. And it just gets intense where, yeah, because they are determined to know from her, and when she knows nothing. I mean, can't they get the hint? And even with the mentioning of a girl, because, yeah, at one point, we happen to see Athena questioning Casey's little brother about Casey and where she went to and on account of the pen. And we just so happened to had seen Athena earlier where she was witnessing Casey and she did something with Casey's DNA on the pen, which, yeah, allowed Casey to, when touching the pen, to see all around her. So, yeah. And again, with Ursula and Hugo questioning Casey whom the girl is and so on, she knows absolutely nothing. Well, they're not going to let her off the hook that easily, even when using actual ray guns to get her to question and answer their questions and such, and gonna threaten to kill her. But luckily, Athena does show up in the nick of time and trying to take care of Ursula and Hugo. And it would turn out that Ursula and Hugo, they're actually, as they're referred to most prominently, animatronics. Yeah, audio animatronics. Yeah, good way to call them. And yeah, because to the Disney parks, that's what they're referred to. Audio animatronics, because that's what they are. Duh. So yeah, in fact, Athena did use a time bomb to hold them in position, and it would get them out of there in time to escape from them. But yeah, but even when Casey's hand got stuck in the time bomb, but yeah. But eventually, yeah, because Athena and Casey, they managed to take down Hugo and Ursula. Ursula's head was decapitated, while Hugo was shot in the chest and such, and impaled, and he was about to self-destruct. And yeah, that's what happens. And it would cause the entire comic book store to obliterate, yeah, in flames. And, well, Athena has Cassie come along with her, and she hijacks a car, and they thus make their destination to wherever it is they're going to go to. And at one point a little later, policemen were investigating the situation with the explosion of Blast from the Past when a couple of animatronics show up, and they're their very own special investigators and so on, and it just gets a bit out of hand when one of the policemen discovered the burned audio animatronic head of Ursula, and with the mentioning of the girl. And the animatronics, they dispose the policemen who are witnesses. And one of those audio animatronics being, yeah, Dave Clark, being played by Matthew McConaughey, if I said that right. Also, can't forget to mention, because we briefly see her when we get a little bit of Casey as a young girl, dreaming of going up to the stars into space. Her mother, Jenny Newton, being played by Judy Greer, because, well, when we come to Casey, now a teenager, well, it's obvious that, sadly, at some point, Jenny passed away. So, yeah, couldn't forget to mention Jenny and, yeah, Judy Greer that, plays Jenny in a flashback. But anyways, and yeah, as I mentioned, Michael Giacchino, he's credited as the small world operator. Yes. And also, oh yes, because young Casey Newton was played by Shiloh Nelson. Yes. Okay, so continuing, because yeah, now Athena and Casey, they're on the road, and Casey questions Athena about what all is going on, and Athena informing Casey about the pen, and Athena was responsible for giving her the pen, and had been following Casey for a little while, up to now, and, well, even when Athena informs Casey that that pen she gave to Casey, that's the last one, and even when Casey also informs about, Hugo and Ursula, they were audio animatronics, and it turns out that she's an audio animatronic as well. That explains why so many years passed and she's not aged and so on, because she's an animatronic. And she actually starts to malfunction. She repairs herself on the side of her neck, and Casey, being freaked out by this, she gets out of the car, and Athena was gonna try to catch up to her, but she got hit by a truck, and Casey hijacked the truck, then Athena, reactivating, chasing after Casey, crashing through the back of the window of the truck, and getting her to calm down and to listen to her clearly. That, yeah, again, about the pen that she gave to Casey. It was the last one, and she needs her to come along with her. She needs Casey to come along with her to Tomorrowland because of a machine that was built that should not have been built, and it's, yeah, bad taste of trouble. And they need to get one more person to come along with them on this adventure to Tomorrowland, and that being a scientist by the name of Frank Walker. Yes, Frank Walker. And Casey then starts to ask a lot of questions to Athena about the others that got the other pens, but Athena just, not thrilled with the many questions that Casey has. She shuts down for a while, but then she reactivates sometime later in the evening, and she takes over driving, and Casey, she starts to doze off, and when, Athena was going to talk more about Frank Walker, and even when Cassie, she fell asleep, Athena then starts to visually have memories of the times that she had with young Frank and their time on Tomorrowland and such. And, and we do discover that, unfortunately, and to go ahead and mention this, because this would be brought up very later on in the film, toward, up to the climax, where, a couple years later, Frank was exiled from Tomorrowland. And because of a machine he built and such, and Frank changed for a while because he felt betrayed and hurt by Athena, being used and so on, and Tomorrowland is just nothing, and so on. But he was technically wrong, and what would be established a little later on in this movie. Then the next day, Casey, she would wake up on the side of the road. Athena just leaves her there, but leaving her right where the property of Frank Walker is, seeing the mailbox that has his name on it, approaching the house, and a dog awakens, and, it turns out that dog was a hologram, and because it doesn't leave any paw prints on the dirt, on the ground. And Casey trying to interact with Frank, and by showing her the pen that she has, but yeah, Frank wants no part of it, and just telling her that, it's a manipulative place, Tomorrowland. But Casey, she's not giving up even when she has to still be outside, even when, it's late in the evening, it thunderstorms, and she tries to find ways to get herself inside his house. Well, for one thing, she sets his active, automatic, grass powder, whatever it's specifically called, but that you use outside the back of your house, that kind of machinery. She sets it on fire, and this does get Frank's attention. He puts it out with a special fire extinguisher that can literally freeze anything. But that was the bait. Casey gets inside of the house, locks Frank out, and she starts to look at some of the gadgetries that he has, and even one that has files of memories when they were kids. And one of them is young Frank's attempt to make Athena laugh, but sadly not working. Then Casey finds herself in a room where there are all these monitors that Frank has, monitors almost around the globe, and there's a countdown. Something about that countdown that's a bit suspicious. Then, Frank, he made his way into the house through the basement, and he was this close to throwing out Casey, but when Casey convinces him to answer her questions about Tomorrowland and so on, and he would explain to Casey that he was exiled because of a certain machine he built, and this has to do with the timer that we see, and that is connected with the monitors all around the globe. And then Frank asks Casey if she would want to know the date of her death and so on, and she says yes, but then decides not to know because this would cause it to happen and such, and that they should focus on their new destiny and so on with what she specifically says. And because of this statement, it actually changes the prestigious, however, the word I'm looking for, what I'm saying. Something changes on the screens and with the timer. and this impresses Frank. But their conversation is interrupted when, the evil audio animatronics, led by Dave, they arrive, and because, on account that they're searching for Athena, as well as, taking down Frank. And that sequence where the audio animatronics, they break into Frank's house, even when Frank locks up the house, but they still manage to get through. But lucky for Frank, he managed to set up some contraptions to easily take down the audio animatronics, like instantly, because with electrical, stuff that shocks them or, slices them in half and such, like, it's pretty impressive. And eventually, they manage to make their way into the bathroom. They hop into a bathtub that's like an escape pod and such. But Dave, still standing, trying to get to them. Well, they of course manage to escape, and they make the house, Frank's house, it explodes, set off the detonator, the self-destruct, and with it, the rest of the animatronics being killed by the explosion, being engulfed in and such. And the escape pod of the bathtub, it lands its way into the river, and, Frank just not wanting any part of this. In fact, he was going to take Casey back to her dad, and he did notice a NASA hat that she was wearing because, on account of Casey's dad. And Casey, in telling Frank that her dad is awesome, and unlike what Frank's dad was like, towards him. Before they disembark, like, Frank's trying to start up a motorcycle, a truck comes in, but thankfully, it's the same truck that Casey and Athena hijacked, and Athena driving the truck. So, a not-so-good reunion between Athena and Frank. Well, and again, because of how Frank felt when he was exiled, the other good word to use would be kicked out of Tomorrowland, How he had felt towards Athena after all of that, and just, So, again, not a great reunion between, Athena and Frank. But it would get better as the film proceeds, obviously. And we also find out, and when Frank and Athena, they get into an argument, 12 pens that were supposed to be destroyed, Athena took them. And also, not to mention, Athena as well has been kicked out of Tomorrowland. But overall, she took the last remaining 12 pens to give it to the others like Casey to enter in Tomorrowland and such. And Frank still being hurt by Athena, which is not the case with what happened, and telling Casey that Athena is lying, manipulative, and so on, and and eventually, they would find themselves where there's a secret station that's linked to Frank's house, and another capsule that they get into that will transport them to where they need to go to next, which being in Paris. And man, because them getting in the capsule, and both Casey and Frank, they have to wear special headgear, like, sound headphones and blindfolds and such, because of how distorted it is in the capsule and with the transportation. But Athena, she doesn't need any of that because she's a robot. It can't affect her. And because with them traveling in the capsule, man, because it makes Casey very distorted and with her blood sugar going down. And when she gets out, she's in need of refreshments. And just so happens that, getting a Coke bottle out, she takes the second one that Frank was going to drink. But overall, they've made their way to Paris, France, and right at the Eiffel Tower. And it turns out that in the Eiffel Tower, apparently, there's a secret rocket that was built underground in the Eiffel Tower. And, the ones that discovered and were responsible for Tomorrowland was Mr. Eiffel himself, and along with him, Verne, Tesla, and Edison. They were the main guys whom discovered Tomorrowland and were responsible for what would be installed in the Eiffel Tower. And, because, yeah, Gustav Eiffel, who had built the Eiffel Tower and responsible for, the rocket that was placed in it. And, yeah, because, little description on this, because, yeah, the Eiffel Tower is, yeah, the prized monument built by Gustav Eiffel himself. Yeah, firstly for the 1889 World's Fair in Paris. It also became the founding place for Plus Ultra at the time, along with the secret rocket hangar and holding tower purposes for the rocket. And also, this antenna that's installed in the Eiffel Tower linked with Tomorrowland and so on. Yeah. And Frank discovering the secret location inside the Eiffel Tower where to launch the rocket and so on. And with this, the Eiffel Tower splitting in half, two halves and such, two parts, and the rocket being lifted up and such, and then, yeah, Frank, Athena, and Casey, they hop into the rocket, only to have still the audio animatronics led by Dave still on their tail, but eventually they managed to lose them, even when, say, Dave, he broke the glass on one of the windows of the rocket, but they still managed to escape, and, yeah, be launched into outer space. And everybody in Paris witnessing this, and they're not freaked out or anything. All they do is, well, I think it's obvious, whip out their phones and record what they're seeing. However, a blast wave from the rocket, it does cause almost the entirety of Paris to have a blackout. Even the phones. The same goes for the phones. And, well, with them launching into outer space, well, then the rocket piece would then make its way back to Earth, but through a portal. Because, yeah, going to Tomorrowland, it's in a different dimension and such. So that's what happens. And, yeah, another historic thing that happens with them. And, yeah, but of course, they would find themselves in Tomorrowland. Casey was unconscious, but, yeah, she regained consciousness. And, yep, thus they've made their way to Tomorrowland. And yeah, the more we see of Tomorrowland, but parts of Tomorrowland, they're not looking too good. Yeah, because with what we're seeing right now and with what they see. And not to mention, here's another thing, because if any of you, I'm sure you did, if you happen to have noticed this in the background of the city of Tomorrowland in the film, you will notice an Easter egg. That Space Mountain is in there. How can you miss it? Come on, because how can we not recognize that iconic attraction in Tomorrowland that you can see plain as day in Tomorrowland? Space Mountain. And to mention Meet the Robinsons once again, it too had Space Mountain. So, like I said, both Meet the Robinsons and Tomorrowland, being Walta-centric and with his vision of the future. That's great to see. Okay, and to speed things up some, because, yeah, well, the authorities arrive, and, yeah, Governor Nix, yep, we once again see Nix, whom is governor of the city of Tomorrowland, well, he wants to arrest them. However, Athena and Frank, they inform Nix that, the percentage is, if I'm saying it right, it was changed because of Casey and such. And not to mention that Casey's purpose of being here in Tomorrowland is to stop with what is going to happen, sometime later in her world and so on, to prevent something from happening and so on, can solve this problem and so on. And Nix, being shocked by this, he does not arrest them and instead, does take them to this machine that was responsible by Frank, a dangerous machine called the Tachyon machine. Yeah, or as it's also known as the Tachyon Spear, and it's a device that was invented by Frank, and it can show images from the future, including a vision of a worldwide catastrophe. But yeah, get there in just a moment. And as they make their way up to inside the Tachyon machine / the sphere, well, there's some holographic images of themselves. That's actually what's going to happen a few seconds in the future. And one of them is, unfortunately, the wind-blowing Casey's NASA hat. So, yeah, she lost that hat forever, so that's unfortunate. So, by making their way inside the Tachyon machine / sphere, again, because can show images from the future, and Frank showing Casey how to work the thing, and already she's got the hang of it. Even Nix finding it very impressive, and even Frank telling Nix that he just met her yesterday, so, yeah. But anyways, so, and with the discovery of, yeah, the catastrophe, well, because, yeah, when it navigates projections, or broadcast to Earth, yeah, via a powerful antenna, yep, the antenna being another big part of the machine, yeah. Humanity lost hope and accept their doom instead of acting to change their future. And because of this, in 58 days, as of today and where the movie is now, catastrophe will happen. And hence the word catastrophe. Yeah, the world's gonna blow up. Nothing's gonna be left. Where Casey comes from, in the main world and such, Earth, everything's gonna be lost. And when seeing what her home is like in 58 days, it's just going to be a remaining, like, place where it's flooded with water and so on. And why hasn't anybody done anything about this? Nix, like, warning the people. Well, because Nix just, they've accepted, because according to him, they've accepted their doom, as I just read, yeah. Accepting their doom instead of acting to change it, and won't let anyone come to Tomorrowland, because they're going to do the same thing to Tomorrowland. Or that's what Nix thinks. I mean, obviously there's a way to prevent this from happening, and something much better in a good way. And because Casey doesn't accept this, there was actually a glitch. Like, well, not glitch, but yeah, something changed in the images of the future, where with this, just a quick glimpse that this can be changed. However, Nix, he doesn't care. In fact, he knocks out Frank with this tool that, yeah, they did use earlier to knock out, that, yeah, Casey used to knock out a security guard at the Eiffel Tower, just with a simple tap, and boom, you're knocked out. But yeah, and because of this, well, yeah, Frank was knocked out, and then he would find himself awake where he, Athena, and Casey are being held hostage, and until they are going to be sent back to Earth, and from there on. And Casey, by this point, how hurt she feels about this. You know, and being very angry and upset towards Frank and Athena. Okay, and still to speed things up, well, because she then starts to blame both Athena and Frank about this for lying, well, something strikes in her head. The screens, the countdown, with Frank having monitoring all of the world, well, with this, zapping in people's minds and their heads about, the apocalypse and so on, the end of the world stuff and so on. And, well, they just gotta turn it off. Turn off the antenna, the tachyon machine and such. And when they're about to be sent back to Earth, they share this to Nix, and it's gotta be turned off. But Nix, addressing to them that there is no turn-off button. It's impossible. But it would quickly occur to Frank that Nix is the one that's responsible for this, giving those zaps in people's heads and minds about the end of the world, their doom and such, and accepting it. And Nix goes into full detail about, well, they tried to warn the government about the apocalypse, Earth being doomed and such, but they chose to ignore it. And eventually, they would discover this, and, instead of a bright future, just letting humanity accepting their own fate, and it's on them, not the machines and such. But yeah, because, to read anything else, because, because again, humanity lost hope and accepted their doom instead of acting to change their future. Yep, and the machine was ultimately destroyed. It would be destroyed. Because of this, and they're not going to get through Nix, because, clearly, Nix, of course, being the bad guy and being an asshole, pretty much. Pardon my French, but it's true. And Frank pretending to accept the fate and gives him a handshake, but he presses a button on Nix's hand wrist that is connected to all the machineries and with the tachyon machine. Because of this, well, yeah, then Casey and Athena, they fight off the animatronic guards, and a couple of robots are activated by Nyx, and yeah, the sequence was pretty cool, the fight in action and such, and where Nyx was gonna send all three of them to was this nice tropical beach and such. But yeah, but with that and like, yeah, Frank and Nyx, they find themselves going out into the beach and, yeah, one of the robots accidentally, part of him gets, you know, sent to the beach and so on. And also not to mention that early on, Frank, had Athena place a detonator, a bomb inside of her for a special occasion, like when the time was gonna come, like, yeah, activate that bomb and so on. And now the time has come to use that bomb to destroy the tachyon machine and with it the antenna. And it's up to Casey at one point to use the bomb to destroy it, but because of Nyx using the wrist watch he has, you know, activating the contraption that sends Casey up, but yeah, and still seeing holographic images of what's going to happen in a few seconds, and yeah, her falling down, but even at one point, Athena, you know, getting control of one of the robots and saving Casey's life. And unfortunately, what happens to the bomb is that, you know, it's just about to self-destruct, and it's thrown out to the beach. And Nyx and Frank, they make a run for it. So the bomb goes off, and yeah, they've got nothing. And, well, the portal, it got destroyed, and part of the portal, it landed on top of Nyx, crushing his legs. Then there's a moment where, yeah, Athena regained consciousness, and she sees Frank getting blasted by a ray gun from Nyx, but that was a few seconds in the future. Yeah, one of those holographic images. And because of this, yeah, I should have seen it coming. Athena makes the ultimate sacrifice, saving Frank's life. And because of this, well, she already activated the self-destruct, and there is no chance that she can be fixed, and so on. She's done for. And because of this, well, yeah, the final moments between Frank, Athena, as well as Casey, well, and here's another thing. With the purpose of Athena finding Casey, because Casey, like so many others who discover those pins, they're dreamers. And then Athena, you know, activating some logs, playing some logs on, you know, the days that she and Frank had when Frank was a kid and in Tomorrowland. And it's very emotional. And even when, you know, Frank, I think it's obvious that at a young age, he had a crush on Athena and liked her. Well, Athena did as well. But because at that time Frank felt betrayed and hurt by Athena, which ended up not being the case. Yeah, Frank realizing that at the end, just, yeah, it's a very touching moment. And, you know, even Frank and Casey, they get choked up, and, well, what happens next is, and with the self-destruct having been activated inside of Athena, Frank using a jetpack, flying up in the air, and going to drop Athena to destroy the tachyon machine, and with the antenna. And both of them saying their goodbyes, and he drops her in the nick of time, and yep, boom. The explosion goes off, the self-destruct, and with it, yeah, the tachyon machine, the antenna, and that sphere, it crashed right on top of Nyx. And the last line that Nyx gets is, oh, bollocks. And yeah, he's done for. Bye-bye, Nyx. You got what was coming to you. And yeah. And now that the tachyon machine / sphere has been destroyed, well, no more zapping, and no more doom approaching those on Earth, and yeah, the apocalypse and such, yeah, it's all been taken care of. A bright new future is upon us in this movie. So, the aftermath / epilogue to Tomorrowland. Well, what Frank and Casey do next is, well, make the future bright and better, of course. Yep. Frank, having fixed the portal, Casey reuniting with her dad and brother, and them experiencing Tomorrowland, and, yeah, like, and realizing that Casey was telling the truth when she touched that pen, and where the movie started off, where, yeah, Frank and Casey, off camera, they were telling a story and such, yeah, because we come back to that, because, yeah, Frank and Casey were telling the entire story of how this came to be and where he and Casey are at now and so on. Also, not to mention that, yeah, they restarted the pin program, making more new pins and building more animatronics like Athena and these robots, the purpose of traveling into the real world and dropping off pins for those who are young, bright, and imaginative. They have they're dreamers and such, and yeah, seen all of them, like a musician, a judge, a farmer, all of them. Just these random people who are dreamers, discovering, touching the pin, and they would find themselves in Tomorrowland. Nice. That's great to see. Yeah. And to name some of the other cast members, because, yeah, just a few, because, Young Astronaut was played by Pira Rajatanam, if I said that right, and her parents, they're credited as astronauts' father and mother, Lena Monroe and Parm Soar. And also Eiffel Tower guards 1 and 2, Patrick Sabanoki and Ramald Hevart. And, and also, like, some of the, robots, like, like Dave Clark 7 being played by Jason Bell, and World's Fair Patreon, Gregory Bennett, and, NASA Location Operations Manager, he plays himself, Michael Cianelli, if I can say that right, and DQ Patreon, Gracie Danelson, Leslie Danelson, sisters, and also brother Luke Danelson, and also Lonely Man, played by Michael Ray Davis, Nick Six, played by Peter Drewerhouse, if I even said that right. Some of these that are uncredited, but yeah, just wanted to name a couple of other cast members, but yeah. But what a great way to end off the film with, how Tomorrowland should continue as it is, and because now that Frank and Casey are at the lead, and again, they've restarted the pin program, and yep, things will be better in the future, and as the film establishes. Yeah. So, yeah, Tomorrowland. Again, sadly, it may not be the best Disney live-action film based off of the Disney parks, and in this case, based off of an entire land, and in this case being Tomorrowland. But at the same time, it's not bad or anything. It's not god-awful. Like I said, it's not Brad Bird's fault. It's not the cast's fault. Nobody. They tried their best, but sadly, it had some bad luck. Yeah. And again, like I said, and with what Brad specifically stated, a lot of people, assumed that the movie was going to take place entirely in Tomorrowland, but not really. Yeah. A road trip movie and such, and how he puts at it. And if you're aware of what Brad Bird had said about Tomorrowland, the aftermath of the film. But yeah. But just overall, from the storyline, the cast of characters, great talents from George Clooney, Hugh Laurie, Britt Robertson, Rafi Cassidy, Tim McGraw, Kathryn Hahn, Keegan-Michael Kay. The list goes on. Beautiful and great visuals, and to mention Industrial Light and Magic, because they did the beautiful visual effects and such. Seeing the World's Fair, them traveling to the Eiffel Tower, the fact that there's a rocket underneath the Eiffel Tower, the way Tomorrowland looks in the movie itself, and with the orange pen with the letter T being blue, some pretty good moments here and there. Funny moments, emotional moments, Michael Giacchino's music and score, Brad Bird's direction, overall, everything about Tomorrowland, at least in my opinion, and if you guys feel the same way too, very enjoyable. Yeah. And I'm giving Tomorrowland, well, what the heck, 8 out of 10 stars. Yes, 8 out of 10 stars for Brad Bird's Tomorrowland. And what about you guys? What did you think of Tomorrowland itself? How did you feel about this the first time you heard about this? Were you excited and when you saw the trailers, and did you get to experience this in theaters? Did you enjoy it overall despite it, But but not to say it's god-awful, you know? Do you have some favorite moments, favorite characters, you know, and with the homage and Walt-centric it is, with his vision of the future, some references here and there, and as I've mentioned, and yeah, and if, again, just overall, if you really enjoyed this, and yeah, knowing that Brad Bird, he tried his best with this movie. Yeah, and, you know, who doesn't love Brad Bird, you know? I mean, you know, here's another thing, because, you know, after doing this, then he would find himself back in the realm of animation doing The Incredibles 2, and yeah, that's another story, and we know how The Incredibles 2 turned out, but that wasn't awful as well, just, yeah. Brad, he tried his best with The Incredibles 2, but yeah, even after having done Tomorrowland, but you get my point, just, yeah. But overall, just, yeah, with Tomorrowland, what did you think of the film itself? And with what I've had to say, my review, and yeah, what did you think of my review? Leave comments, and give this review video a like, as always. And so, guys, with all that being said, thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed my review of Tomorrowland. More review videos are coming your way. They're going to be awesome. Keep looking forward, and I will see you guys in the next video / review. Take care. Happy anniversary to Tomorrowland. Keep on dreaming, and peace out.